In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up your own SpeedTracker dashboard and start monitoring the performance of your website. I'll be following the documentation page on SpeedTracker.org, where you'll find a quick start guide that can get you up and running in just a few steps. SpeedTracker runs on top of web page test, so the first thing you'll need to do is request a web page test API key on webpagetest.org. After you fill in your details, you'll receive a key instantly. Copy that key to a secure place and we'll use it in a second. I have my API key already, so I'm going to skip this step. Next, you'll need to grab a copy of the SpeedTracker application by forking this repository into your own GitHub profile or organization. This is where your dashboard and the test results will live. To serve this repository as a website, we need to enable GitHub Pages, which you can do by going to Settings, scroll down to GitHub Pages, and select the branch you want to serve from. I'll choose Master. After you hit Save, you'll see the option to add a custom domain, which is optional. I've already pointed the subdomain demo.speedtracker.org to my GitHub account, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. The next step is to give the SpeedTracker service access to the repository you've just created, so that it can upload your test results. Still within Settings, go to Collaborators and add the user SpeedTracker bot to your project. This way, you give the service access to just this repository and not your entire GitHub account. To complete the connection between the service and your repository, use the Connect tool. Fill in your GitHub username and repository and hit Connect. At this point, your repository is fully registered with SpeedTracker. We can now start configuring our dashboard by editing the main configuration file, speedtracker.yaml. One important thing to point out is that this file will hold some information that must remain private, such as a web page test API key, email address, or a Slack webhook URL. But we want to be able to serve our SpeedTracker dashboard from a public GitHub repository, which means that anyone will have access to your configuration file. To get around this, you'll need to choose a passkey that we'll use to encrypt any sensitive piece of information, which you'll need to supply with every request you make to the SpeedTracker API. It will allow the service to verify your identity and to unlock the text from your config file. You can use the encrypt tool to encrypt any given text with a key of your choice. Start by generating an encrypted version of the key itself. Insert the key in the first field and hit encrypt. You can leave the other field blank for now. This is our encrypted key, which we'll use in the encryption key field of our config file. Next, you'll need to specify your web page test API key. Again, we don't want to leave this information out in the open, so we'll use the encrypt tool to protect it. By using the same key you previously used, insert your web page test API key on a second text field and hit encrypt. Grab the encrypted result and use it on the WPT key field in the config file. In this file, you can also configure alerts that will be triggered at certain events, such as when a performance metric goes over its budget. At the moment, this can be an email where you configure a list of recipients, and don't forget to use the encrypt tool to protect the email addresses, or a Slack notification, where the hook URL must also be encrypted. We'll leave this out for now, but you can read more about it in the documentation pages. Finally, we need to create a profile. All tests must run against a profile, which will contain the URL of the website to be tested, as well as any parameters used by a web page test and other options we'll see in a second. A profile is defined as a file inside the _profiles directory. The name of the file is important, as it'll serve as our profile ID. You can start by editing the default one, default.html. The first property configures the human-friendly name of your profile. It can be useful to include the name of the website you're testing and any reference to the nature of the test. I'm going to call this one CSS Tricks Cable, as I'll configure the test to run from a cable connection. The parameters section is quite an important one, since it's where you'll define the URL of the website to be tested and the nature of the test itself, such as the location and connection type. You can specify budgets for any of the performance metrics specific to this profile, and if you've previously defined alerts in the main config file, you can trigger them when a budget is overrun. You can now navigate to the URL of your new SpeedTracker dashboard. We don't have any data yet, so let's take care of that by running our first test. You can request a test by sending a GET or POST request to a URL that is formed by your GitHub username, repository, branch, ID of the profile to be tested, and your key. You can use this URL to request tests programmatically, for example, as part of a GitHub webhook that requests a test every time you push to a certain branch. Alternatively, you can use the UI on speedtracker.org/test. Fill in your details and hit Run Test. The test will now enter a queue and might take a few minutes for the results to be generated. Once ready, if you go to your repository, you should be able to see a commit by SpeedTracker bot with your first test results. You can now refresh your dashboard and it'll show the new data.